Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple. Ole Gunnar Solskjaers' mixed bag as permanent manager of Manchester United has continued, with plenty of highs and plenty of lows as well. In 1920, we have seen him mix up his tactics, so in this video, we take a look at some of these tactical trends. Formationally, there have been two distinct options, the 4-2-3-1 being the most commonly utilized option, and interestingly, against the traditional Big Six teams, he has adapted more, using variants of a back three, primarily a 3-4-1-2. But we'll start with the more commonly used 4-2-3-1, whose starting 11 often looks like this. Let's start with the build-up play in this formation. On the occasions where De Gea plays it short to either of the centre-backs, at times both Maguire and Lindelof have shown their ability on the ball, as they are both comfortable on it. However, when both fullbacks advance high against teams who press higher, this limits the passing options available to the centre-backs, as the double pivots can be covered by the opponent's cover shadow. At times, Fred and Matic don't show the urgency required to create the angles to penetrate the first line with the pass here. So, the only option is for the centre-backs to go to the fullbacks who will be up against the touchline, and as a result, their main option is either to go backwards or to try and find their man with a long pass down into the channels. The frequent lack of passing options is shown by them only having the 9th highest opposition passes per defensive action, which is how many passes United completes before losing the ball. At times, Fred or Matic will drop deep, which would then give the centre-backs, who now be wider in the back three, an easier angle for the pass into midfield. However, whilst Fred and Matic drop deep, they aren't the quickest of passers, unlike the likes of Rodri or Jorginho when they drop into the back three to form the build-up, where their quick passes can get the team moving. The obvious solution to this would have been Pogba, who can easily perform this role, but injuries have prevented this being a possibility. In addition, most teams who build up through the back are comfortable having centre-backs move wider into the half spaces to generate these passing angles. However, as the rest of the team isn't comfortable on the ball and a turnover is possible, which would mean that the opposition could easily transition through the centre, so instead, the centre-backs remain relatively central. However, some teams are content to sit deeper against United and try and force them to create their own opportunities and limit the space provided. United then run into a similar problem from higher up the pitch, with both Fred and Matic being more limited passers. When McTominay features, he's more comfortable carrying the ball at his feet, rather than providing the defense-splitting pass. This also factors in to how the wingers play, as against the deeper block they have less room to run into, and may not have the confidence to repeatedly make these runs, as they may not be found. As a result, they receive the ball to their feet. When James plays on the left, against the deep block, he doesn't have the space to fully exploit his pace on the flank, and as a result, his impact is limited. Juan Mata has often featured wide on the right-hand side, and naturally he cuts in, and he at times provides the necessary creativity from the central regions for the centre forwards to run onto his passes. But Wan-Bissaka is not great offensively, and though he will advance and try to make up for the lack of width when Mata tucks in, he's not a crossing threat from high up, only averaging 0.3 crosses per game. On the left, Williams and Shaw are both much more offensive and comfortable bombing forward. So, Ole often reasonably sets the team up to its strengths, with James wide on the right and one of Rashford or Martial wide on the left-hand side. James hugs the touchline, meaning that he can provide the necessary width from the right-hand side, and both Rashford and Martial look to cut in, and the left-backs can more freely overlap into their vacated space. However, the left-back can still get isolated on the left when the winger tucks in too early. The attacking midfielders who have played here have struggled to break down these deep blocks, partly due to not having the deftness of pass, but the offensive players may have pace but tend to run in a straight line, thus struggling to provide a dangerous run for the attacking midfielder to pass to. If a team is not great at creating through the centre, the wide creativity has to be elite, and that is the model that Liverpool uses. However, whilst United's left-backs like to overlap, both of their expected assists are low, and the same can be said of Wan-Bissaka and James from the right-hand side. This lack of creativity from out wide and down the centre has meant that the forwards have been starved of high-quality chances, being reduced to shots from range as they won't get better opportunities. As a result, United take the fewest shots from inside the box in the league, and the highest percentage from outside, a worrying statistic as these tend to be low-quality chances. Bruno Fernandes has improved this since coming in, having been handed the mantle as the central attacking midfielder, and has provided the missing creativity, providing more key passes and a higher expected assist per 90 than Lingard and Pereira when they played in this position, and only being challenged by Mata and Pogba. Most importantly, he has the movement to consistently get between the lines with his runs, which is something Mata can't provide when he plays from these regions. When they transition to the defensive phase, United do not look to counter-press or press high generally. In fact, they allow almost 10 passes per defensive action, meaning 7 teams in the league press more effectively than they do. The forward players are expected to drop into a solid 4-2-3-1, which can often look like a 4-4-2, with the two expected to stay high ready for the counter. In these deep defensive phases, Fred and Matic and the functional attacking midfielder are advantageous as they can press the opponent when they do get into dangerous positions. This, combined with their compact centre-backs and the fact that Wan-Bissaka can hold down an entire flank defensively alone, meaning that James often has the permission to creep forward ready for the counter-attack. The solid defensive block means that United has one of the best defences in the league. When United do counter-attack, the pace of their front line comes into effect, as Solskjaer commits numbers to the attack, using volume to overwhelm the opposition defence. The movements are often simple, and the counters are less about intricate movement and more dependent on the individual quality and pace of the players. These counterattacks often lead to United's most dangerous opportunities. From the slow controlled build-up play, they have a low expected goal per shot, as they run out of ideas and have a long shot which has a low percentage of going in, compared to counters where they can use their pace to work their way into the box and have a good quality shot. So how is the 3-4-1-2 any different? Well, on the build-up, there is no more onus on one of the defensive midfielders to drop in, as they now have the numbers and the better angles to play around the opposition press. Shaw, at left centre-back, gives them a left-footed option at left centre-back, meaning that the speed of build-up play can be increased. The wing-backs also have more permission to push up, and Williams is keen to do this providing the width. James is often played as the right forward when this formation has been used, so when Wan-Bissaka pushed high, he often occupied the opposition left back, opening up space for the ball over the top into this channel. But high up the pitch, they face the same struggles, so the main advantage of this formation is that it facilitates better counterattacks from deep regions. By having two genuine forwards, they are often able to split their runs on the counterattack, which forces the opposition centre-backs wide, and also opens space for the attacking midfielder to join in, and as a result, they have more numbers committed to the attack. But as this formation is mainly used versus Big Six teams, a major motivation is better defensive presence. The extra centre-back, combined with a double pivot, means that they have these 5, who tend to stay between the width of the box, to form a solid block, making it difficult for opponents to penetrate them centrally. On the right, as discussed, Wan-Bissaka can stop most wingers he faces on the flank. On the left, Williams can cover a man, and Shaw, usually a left centre-back, can always move out to cover any potential overloads occurring in this region. United have much to be optimistic about, however there is still much that needs to be improved. The expected metrics make for improved reading compared to last season, with the expected points, goals and goals against all being within the top 4 of the league. But if United is to reach the truly elite levels, a more defined style of play, particularly in the offensive realm, will be required, as counter-attacking is not always the most efficient method. Bruno Fernandes has started his career at Old Trafford brightly, but to expect him to single-handedly provide the creativity for the team is unrealistic and unsustainable. Moving forward, Solskjaer would probably need to develop methods which create space for the forwards to have better shots in higher quality regions. But what other tactics does Oli employ not mentioned in this video? What do you think he has done well and what could be improved? Drop it down in the comments below. But that's all for today, and remember, keep it simple.